Hello everyone, my greetings to one and all. This is the ninth and the last session on utility analysis. In the previous two sessions, you have understood how the consumer achieves his equilibrium assuming he consumes just one commodity. But in real life, no consumer consumes only one commodity. Every consumer consumes more than one commodity. Keeping this in mind, so let's take the analysis forward by assuming that the consumer consumes two commodities. How is then equilibrium achieved? I am Poonam Vohra from Microeconomics Learning Center. In this session, you will understand the consumer's equilibrium assuming the consumer consumes more than one commodity. What is applicable for two goods is applicable for n number of goods. The entire exercise is to allocate his limited income on the different units of two goods consumed in such a manner that utility derived by consuming certain number of one unit is same as utility derived by certain other units of another good, and the summation of such utilities should be equal to or less than his income. So let's see how is allocation of income done by the consumer and how is equilibrium achieved. So let's try to understand how is the allocation made and equilibrium achieved by the consumer. Now the consumer wants to allocate his money income between two goods in order to attain the equilibrium position. This is based on the law of equi-marginal utility. According to this law, a consumer gets maximum satisfaction when the ratios of marginal utility of two commodities and their respective prices are equal. On this basis, the equilibrium conditions are 1. Ratio of marginal utility to price of X is same as the ratio of marginal utility to price of Y is same as marginal utility of money. And marginal utility of both commodities must be decreasing. The next condition is that expenditure incurred on X, that is Px into Qx, plus expenditure incurred on Y, that is Py into Qy, is equal or less than income. One has to take note of the fact that these conditions remain same in both the cases, that is when price of both commodities is same and when price of both commodities is different. The law of equi-marginal utility does not refer to the equality of marginal utilities of the two goods, but marginal utility of last rupee spent on each good. The condition states that the law of diminishing marginal utility is in operation. That is, marginal utility of a good falls as more of it is consumed. Once the consumer has attained equilibrium, it is not necessary that the equilibrium will not be disturbed. The equilibrium gets disturbed when the ratio of marginal utility to price of X is greater than the ratio of marginal utility to price of Y, or when the ratio of marginal utility to price of X is less than the ratio of marginal utility to price of Y. Let's understand these in slight more details. Now suppose the ratio of marginal utility to price of X is greater than the ratio of marginal utility to price of Y. It means that the consumer gets more utility from the last rupee spent on X as compared to Y. This induces the consumer to transfer expenditure from Y to X. The consumption of X rises while that of Y falls due to law of diminishing marginal utility. Marginal utility from X falls and marginal utility from Y rises. The consumer would continue to buy more of X till the ratio of marginal utility to price of X is equal to the ratio of marginal utility to price of Y. When the ratio of marginal utility to price of X is equal to the ratio of marginal utility to price of Y, then the consumer gets same marginal utility per rupee and he has no reason to further allocate his income on the two goods he consumes. But if ratio of marginal utility of X to price of X is less than the ratio of marginal utility to price of Y, then the consumer gets more utility from last rupee spent on Y as compared to X. This induces the consumer to transfer expenditure from X to on Y. The consumption of Y increases while that of X falls due to law of diminishing marginal utility. Marginal utility of Y falls and marginal utility of X rises. The consumer would continue to buy more of Y till the ratio of marginal utility and price of X is equal to the ratio of marginal utility and price of Y. When both the ratios are equal, then the consumer gets the same marginal utility per rupee and he has no reason to further allocate his income on the two goods he consumes. In order to understand the consumer's equilibrium, when two commodities are consumed by the consumer, certain assumptions are assumed. First such assumption is utility is measured in cardinal terms. Then marginal utility of money remains constant. Let us suppose that income of the consumer is rupees 42, price of commodity X is rupees 4 and price of commodity Y is rupees 2 per unit. It is further assumed prices of the goods and income of the consumer remains unchanged. And finally, the consumer is a rational consumer who seeks to maximize his satisfaction. Keeping in mind the equilibrium conditions and the assumptions made, let's now understand how does the consumer allocate his income to get maximum level of satisfaction through this tabular presentation. Here, units consumed, marginal utility of X, marginal utility of Y are given and one can find the ratio of marginal utility to price of X and the ratio of marginal utility to price of Y. This ratio shows the willingness of the consumer to buy X as well as willingness of the consumer to buy Y. Now consumption of 1 unit gives 60 utils of satisfaction by consuming commodity X and 46 utils of satisfaction by consuming commodity Y. The consumer is willing to spend 15 rupees on X and 23 rupees on Y simply because price of X is 4 and price of Y is 2. Similarly, it is possible to find willingness of the consumer to buy different units of X and different units of Y. Now it is possible to find equality in the two ratios. That is, the ratio of marginal utility to price of X should be equal to the ratio of marginal utility to price of Y. And such combinations are 1x and 6y, 2x and 7y, 4x and 8y, 6x and 9y, and finally 7x and 10y. The question is, which combination out of all these combinations would be preferred by the consumer? For this, one needs to focus on the second condition of equilibrium. Continuing further, the ratio of marginal utility to price of both goods, X and Y, are same when he buys 1x and 6y, that is 15 utils, and expenditure incurred is 16 rupees, that is 1 multiplied by 4 plus 6 multiplied by 2. Income is rupees 42. 16 is much less than 42. One has to keep in mind. Another combination where both are equal is 2x plus 7y. Marginal utility in both cases is 14. Expenditure incurred is 22. That is 2 into 4 plus 7 into 2. This is also less than the income. Next combination is 4x plus 8y. Marginal utility in both cases is same, that is 12. Total income spent is rupees 32, which is 4 into 4 plus 8 into 2. This is also less than the income consumer has. Another combination is 6x plus 9y, where marginal utility in both cases is 10. Total expenditure incurred is rupees 42. 6 into 4 plus 9 into 2. Now here income spent is same as income the consumer has. Next combination is 7x plus 10y, where marginal utility is same in both cases, 9, where expenditure incurred is 48. That is 7 into 4 plus 10 into 2. With this combination, expenditure incurred is more than the income consumer has. Now let us analyze this. The consumer needs to reallocate his income in first two cases to get maximum satisfaction. The consumer is not in a position to go to 7x plus 10y combination because it is beyond his budget. In order to have maximum utility, the consumer will purchase 6x and 9y units because here both the conditions get satisfied. That is, marginal utility is same in both the cases and expenditure on X plus expenditure on Y is also same as income to be spent. So, the consumer is in equilibrium when he buys 6 units of X and 9 units of Y. At this combination, his total utility is also maximum. And one can find total utility by having summation of marginal utilities. So, the consumer is in equilibrium at this combination. Though theoretically, it is possible to find consumers' equilibrium using utility analysis, but in real life, it's difficult to apply because the consumer needs to measure utilities of different commodities in cardinal terms. It's not possible simply because satisfaction is a psychological phenomenon and there are no objective units to measure utility. Secondly, there are certain goods which are indivisible and it is not possible to equate marginal utility of money spent on them. For example, allocating money between purchase of a car and food items. Marginal utility of the last rupee spent on these two goods cannot be equated. Third, utility analysis assumes that utility derived from various goods are independent and utility is additive. Total utility is the sum of separate utilities of the various goods. In real life, utility derived from a good depends upon availability of some other good, like tea and coffee. Whether the utility from tea is more or less depends upon the utility derived from coffee. So utility is not independent. It depends on other goods too. Finally, the assumption of constant marginal utility of money is not valid. When a consumer spends money income on goods, he is left with less income. With decline in money income, marginal utility of money rises. Also, when price rises or falls, marginal utility of money changes. So it is not possible to apply utility in real life situation. It has been noticed that utility is not feasible in real life, but at the same time it is applicable in economics. The law of equimarginal utility is helpful in production. The producer has limited resources. He uses limited resources to purchase production factors. So he tries to equalize marginal utility of all the factors. Therefore, he wishes to get maximum output and profit. This law is applicable in consumption also. A rational consumer tries to get maximum satisfaction when he spends limited resources. He tries to equalize marginal utility of all the things. This law is used in the field of exchange. People like to exchange a commodity having low utility with the commodity having high utility. So there is maximum benefit from the exchange of commodities. So it is applicable in the exchange of. So the law is helpful in the exchange of wealth, trade, imports and exports. The law is applicable in public finance too. The government can spend its revenue to get maximum social advantage. Marginal utility of each rupee spent in one sector must be equal to marginal utility derived from all the sectors. I hope you have understood how is equilibrium attained by the consumer when the consumer consumes more than one commodity. With this, the session comes to an end. Also, the unit on utility analysis gets complete. In these 9 entire sessions, you have understood about the basic concepts of utility, that is total utility, marginal utility of money, relationship between the total and marginal utility, consumer's equilibrium when one commodity is consumed, consumer's equilibrium when more than one commodity is consumed. In between all these sessions, you have answered few questions also, which are of course not enough. You need to answer all the questions as given in the assignment. Whether they are MCQs, whether they are assertion reasoning based, case based, short answer type, long answer type, numerical, diagrammatic based, every type of a question you need to write to have a complete understanding of the entire chapter. The next session focuses on another approach of consumers equilibrium, that is indifference curve analysis. Till then, keep reading, keep practicing. Thank you.